I come from the land of song, beautiful Wales. Ever since I was a child, music has been my life. I have grown up spending my life traveling the world and performing. I am a concert musician. I have played some of the most magnificent organs of the world. It has been my ambition to travel and film these great musical treasures. Mozart called the organ the king of instruments. This is what you and I will do, travel and film these great royal beasts. Hello, I'm Carol Williams and welcome to Tourbus Goes Celtic. Unusual piston system. These are the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 swell pistons, no numbers. I have never seen an organ like this before, and these are operating various other stops as well. And then the great ones are above the keyboard, which also is unusual because they're usually underneath the keyboard.
How do you cancel?
You cancel by hand, which is, you know, it takes time to push in every stop, and you've got to make sure you've got every stop in. Also, the pedal pistons are down here. You can link the pedal stops to the great stops with this stop, key touches to combination pedals, so I'm getting the pedal stops out, and I'm also getting a balanced great sound, which is great actually, excuse the pun, because if you've got a loud pedal and you want a loud great, and vice versa, if you want a quiet sound on the great, you want a quiet pedal. So that's actually a great asset. The other interesting thing about the organ, it's got 3 keyboards and there are 3 expression pedals. Now, I thought one was a crescendo pedal. It is not. I can't play at the moment because the museum has just opened up. There's a lot of people just coming into the museum. But back to the expression pedals. One is for the swell organ, which is the top keyboard. The left one is for the choir organ, which is the bottom keyboard. Now this box is actually really interesting because the great reeds are enclosed. So if I pull out the great stops, play a chord, you have to manage it. I can close the box down and then crescendos those reeds, and they make a really powerful sound, absolutely powerful sound. Now the uncomfortable thing about this organ is that middle D here on the keyboard should actually fall onto D on the pedal board. That's how organs physically should be. But D is really falling onto B on the pedal board. So when I go down here, my foot is going to C, but I just missed it by one pedal at least. So you've got to get yourself into a completely different position on this organ. And as you only get 2 hours practice before the concert, it's a little frantic. The plus side on it is it's one of the most glorious acoustics in this country. The flutes just sing around the building. The whole organ really is a beautiful example of English organ building, and the room is lovely. So, and they have a concert here every day. Most days are at 1 o'clock. The Sunday concerts, which I'm playing today, is at 3 o'clock. They're a little bit longer. A little bit more that people make an effort to come to these. So I shall be back later on and have a good time. Here we are at Kevin's home. Let's go in for a nice chat.
Let's do that.
I'm sitting in a beautiful room, the library of Crawfordland Castle, and Kevin Bowyer, world famous organist. Oh yes, this is your home. What's it like living here?
It's a privilege to live here. It's a lovely place to live. It's nice and quiet. It's very big. It's miles away from anywhere. It's very relaxing.
Yes.
It's a wonderful place to live.
Great place for making music, huh?
Yeah, or just sort of living your life, doing your normal things every day. It's just a great place away from the hurly-burly of everything else.
How long have you lived here?
Since June 2006, just over 3 years.
So you're positioned in Glasgow now.
Yeah.
How far are we from Glasgow?
We're 20 miles south of Glasgow. We're 2.5 miles out of Kilmarnock.
Mm-hmm. What do you do in Glasgow?
In Glasgow, I'm the university organist. That's my main job.
Uh-huh.
It means I have to accompany the chapel choir for Sunday services, play for graduation ceremonies, oversee various concerts, look at the maintenance of the organs, that kind of thing. Basically anything involved with the university's organs, that's my job.
How many organs are there at the university?
There's the organ in the chapel. That's a Willis 3 from 1927, which was rebuilt by Harrison's in 2005. It's the organ you played.
Yes.
The organ in the Bute Hall is a 70-something stop, 72 stop, 4-manual Lewis from 1904. That was completely rebuilt in 1963 by Hill, Norman and Beard and is now in need of major restoration. But it's basically a very fine instrument. The hall, the Bute Hall, is a very large, by university standards, is a large hall. It seats well over 1,000 people. It's the university's main concert hall, events hall. We have a 2-manual tracker action organ, also in fairly poor condition at the moment, in the university concert hall, which is a small hall seating 200, 300 people. And there are, I think, 2 chamber organs, a 19th century one and a 20th century. Peter Collins, I think.
Wow, that's quite a collection, isn't it?
Yeah.
So during the year, I mean, when the university is down, I mean, what happens then? What does your work entail
What
then?
do I do? Well, there are lots of weddings in
Yes.
the university.
How many do you say a year?
This is our biggest year. We've had 181 wedding bookings this year.
Wow.
The average, I think, up until now has been about 150.
That's a great place to get married. Now, do they have to be like alumni to get married there?
There has to be some connection with the university, not necessarily with the people getting married, but some connection with the family.
All
and
right,
the
so that
university.
opens it up nicely, isn't it?
It does, yeah.
Yeah.
Mm.
So working there, coming back here, that must be a beautiful contrast. With a place so big like this, what do you do with the castle? I mean, obviously just 2 of you living here, what do you do here?
Well, we've only been living in the whole castle for the last month or so. When we originally moved in, we had the centre and the east wing, but now we have the west wing and the old tower. And we've taken on the entire castle.
This is a castle, so it's obviously, you know, it'd be a very special place to have your reception. Truly recommend it. Absolutely lovely.
Yeah.
Absolutely lovely. Yeah.
Yeah, it's a great place. We have a number of sizable rooms, not huge rooms, but
Yeah. Well, I
nice
only
rooms.
ever one other organist who I'd have to just check was Lemons. Nicholas Jacques Lemons in his later life had a castle, and we lived in the castle. So I mean, not many organists get to live in the castle. Beautiful.
No, I'm so lucky. I don't know why I'm here. I'm just Mr. Ordinary, really. I mean, I'm just
I
Mr.
don't think so.
Well, I mean, I think of myself. I think of myself as a kind of village church organist in an inflated sort of university position, but
you are no village church organist.
But you see, I grew up and I learnt the organ on a very small town church organ. It had 8 stops. It was an Este organ. It was a cinema organ, first of all, from the 1920s.
Was it a player
I
organ?
think.
Because a lot of Estes were, weren't they?
Well, unless it was adapted. I don't think it was. I don't think it was. It had 3 stops in the swell, 4 on the grate, 1 on the pedals. It was a very small instrument. So you know, the organ you learn on, I think it becomes part of your blood, doesn't it?
Yes.
And wherever you go after that, there's always a kind of awareness, a kind of comparison with the instrument you play to the instrument on which you learnt. Or perhaps I'm making some of that up, but I think you know what I mean.
I do.
Sorry.
No, but I tell you, but you've gone from that. You studied at the Royal Academy of Music.
Yeah.
You've had eminent teachers, but you've gone on and won nearly every international organ competition that is possible. So you've done it, you know, amazing.
I won 5. I won St Albans.
Only 5.
Yeah, well, I won St Albans in 1983.
Yeah.
That was the first one, and work was regular but pretty slow after that, really. And but by the time we got to the end of the 80s, I really felt that if I was going to make a living out of playing the organ, I better do something else. So I went in for 4 organ competitions in 1990, and I still don't really know why, but I won first prize in all of them. I mean, it's actually quite a long time ago now. It's 20 years ago, nearly now.
Do you think they did help?
Well, there's no doubt that they helped. Yes, but I don't think it's winning organ competitions that produces a living. It makes you successful. It's who you are.
Yeah.
If you're going to be successful as an organist, you've got to have some charisma. You've got to be somebody. You've got to be a person.
Yeah.
You know, winning competitions is really only secondary.
Yeah.
It's quite possible, I think, to win a lot of organ competitions and sink like a stone.
Yes. Now, you've specialised in modern music.
Yep.
What attracted you to contemporary music?
I'm going to
I'm going to say a difficult question, really, because it's like saying, why are your eyes blue? I
Yes,
mean, I
okay.
guess you're just attracted, but any reason?
I can give you a very honest answer to
Good,
that. It's going
good.
to make everybody hate me, I think. I was a nasty little boy, really. I have a very low opinion of myself, not much self-esteem, really, but I think I was a nasty little boy. And up until my late teenage years, I'm going to be very careful how I phrase this, but I used to kind of enjoy a little friction. I mean, not in any sort of aggressive way, but I used to get a buzz when I played contemporary music as a choir boy, and people didn't like it, because I could see they were upset about it.
Why?
I don't know, really.
Why? I mean, because if you play something like a piano symphony, you know people love it.
I know,
Right? So
yes.
what? I don't actually get that. Explain it to me.
I can't explain it to you. I can't explain it to you. I don't fully understand why. I don't want to sell contemporary music short, because that was only how it started.
yeah.
That was how I started to build up a repertoire of contemporary music. As the years went on, I genuinely grew to love it, and I still do. And I don't do the conflict thing anymore. I'm a nice man now.
Okay, then.
Yeah. Okay.
I remember turning pages for you for a Radio 3 broadcast.
Yeah, I think you did too.
Norwich, wasn't it?
Norwich.
And you played the Ligeti.
1985. No, the Ligeti was 1984 in Woodford.
Was it?
In London.
All right.
Yes.
Yes.
That was the first broadcast I did for the BBC after St Albans.
Yeah.
That's right. Yes, that was the Ligeti Coulée. Yes, I did
Volumina.
that. No, it was the 2 organ studies, harmonies and Coulée.
How did you-
April 1984, something like that, I think.
What is the most controversial piece you have played?
Controversial.
Extreme, you know.
Extreme. Extreme. Well, if by extreme you mean something like a graphic score with lots of notation, then I suppose it would be something like the Ligeti Volumina. I've done Tio Sonore by Isang Yun as well, which is a graphic score too. But I mean, from the point of view of what's the hardest piece, what's the most sort of uncompromising piece in that way, then that would certainly be the work I've done so far on the Sarabji Second Symphony.
Now that's been like a project you've done for many, many years. You're
Yeah.
obviously completely into this. Tell us something about Sarabji.
Okay. Well, he was born in 1892 and died in 1988. I knew him in the last year of his life. I went down to see him in the nursing home where he lived. I went down 5 times during 1988. January was the first visit. He died in October, and I saw him the week before he died.
Where was he living then?
Winfrith Newborough in Dorset. He since the 1950s he'd been living in his own house in Corfe Castle, in
Really?
the village of Corfe Castle
Yes.
in Dorset. Yeah. He lived down there from the early 1950s, I think.
Yeah.
He'd been holidaying down there for every year for 20 years or so.
So where was he from originally?
Well, he was born in Chingford, Essex.
Because a name like Sarabji, I was...
His father was from Iran, I think.
Yeah.
Persia, as it was then. He's a piano composer, really. His father set him up with a trust fund, so he was comfortably off for all his life, and never really had to work in the normal sense of the word for a living. He wrote a lot, not just music, but articles, reviews for various magazines, the New Age, Musical Times, all sorts of periodicals. And because he wasn't actually reliant on earning anybody's favour and drawing an income to live on from that writing, he could say precisely what he thought about people, and he did in the most uncompromising terms pretty much every day of his life. And he was able to write these huge pieces, mostly for piano solo, but there are I think 3 orchestral symphonies, sometimes with a soloist or a choir, big keyboard parts in all of them. There's a symphonic high mass from 1962, loads of solo piano pieces running to 8 hours and more, some of the biggest ones. There are 5 piano sonatas. The last one dates from 1935, and then he left the piano sonata form behind and moved on to what he called solo piano symphonies. And the biggest of those is about 6 hours. There are 3 organ symphonies, 3 solo organ symphonies, and it's my lifetime's ambition to produce editions and performances and recordings of these pieces. And I'm doing that now because I have the Sir Ramji Organ Project up and running, and the university is funding me for 5 years to fulfil my lifetime's dream, really.
So at the end of that, you hope to have recorded all the symphonies?
Yes, I think the recording of number 3 is likely to occur the year following the completion of the score of Organ Symphony 3 and the performance of Symphony 3. The project is due to finish in June 2013, and the recording is likely to take place sometime in the year following that.
Are you the only person who plays this work?
Effectively, yes. In the first, well, there are big stories connected with these symphonies. Sir Ramji wrote the first organ symphony in 1923-24. It's an amazing achievement. It's a 2-hour piece, and when you consider that it was written in a very kind of enclosed organist's milieu in Britain, if you imagine how it was in those days, for anybody to write anything remotely like contemporary music in Britain as an organ piece in the 1920s was unheard of. It was 5 years before Messiaen printed his Banquet Celeste. And we have this man living in London, as he was then, producing a solo organ symphony of 2 hours, 3 movements. And that is dwarfed by the second organ symphony, written in 1929-32, which we now runs to 7 3/4 hours. That's the biggest of the 3. And Symphony 3 from 1949 to 1953 plays for a little more than 5 hours. So these are huge pieces. Actually, Symphony 2, I think, is the longest organ piece in the repertoire. If
so it's 7 hours?
It's 7 3/4 hours.
How do you
pushing
plan
8 hours.
something like that for a concert?
2 intervals.
2 intervals?
Yeah, 2
It's
intervals.
an all-day event, isn't it?
Yeah, I've played, there are 3 movements. I've played the first movement and the last movement, and the middle movement is halfway prepared now, so that the first full performance will
You wouldn't
occur.
do it on like 3 days in a row?
No, I don't think so, because I think the experience for this,
Gosh.
it's like climbing Mount Everest. It has to be, I mean, to reach that final chord. And
you can't take a tea break halfway up the mountain, can you?
well, you can take an interval. You can have a rest.
Yes.
But you mustn't sleep overnight. No, it's got to be. It's a full day event. 2 intervals.
So you've played the second one in public?
I played the first movement and the third movement of it in public. Yeah,
Yeah.
I played the second movement. I've done twice.
Mm-hmm.
Sorry, the first movement I've done twice. That's 65 minutes, and the last movement I've done once, just 8 days ago. That's 3 hours and 9 minutes. And the middle movement, that's the longest one, that remains to be performed. That's about 3 hours and 40 minutes.
Did you do them in this country?
Yeah, the first and the last movement of Symphony 2 I've done in the university, and the first movement I've done in St Mary's, Warwick.
Wow.
Yeah, but Symphony 1 I've played in many places. I've played it throughout Europe.
Have you recorded that?
Yes, it was recorded with Continuum Records in 1988 and reissued once.
Yeah.
In the early 90s. It's unavailable now.
Is the music in print then?
It was printed. His father provided funds for 500 copies of Organ Symphony 1 to be printed in 1925, and it was actually typeset, engraved in 1925.
Wow.
And when you see the score, it's amazing
That's
that
what I'm going to
a
ask you.
typesetter would do that. It's extraordinary. I mean, the rhythms are...
Can we see a score?
Yes.
I'd like to see, because I remember seeing this years ago.
Mhm.
This is something to behold.
That's incredible. What is the time? The time signature is what?
There's no time signature.
There's no time
No,
signature.
he didn't
That's
use
very
time
helpful,
signature.
isn't it?
And this symphony is easy
So
compared
basically,
to...
it's 3 beats though, right?
Yeah, you can follow the beats through.
Yeah, so 5
yeah.
to the 2 and then 5.
Yeah.
Or 10, isn't it?
Yeah, you see there's a misprint on the top there. Those quintuplets are actually demis and they're not semis.
Ah, grief. Got that there. The
Yeah.
5 under there and then that. Good lord.
Yeah.
What does it sound like?
It
No,
sounds...
I'm not asking you about
No, well, no, it sounds... It's romantic music, really. I mean, it's not comparable to anything modern. he sort of ignored everything else that was going on and projected romantic music 100 years into the 20th century. So what you hear is like Busoni writing 50 or 60 years later.
That's really neat, isn't it?
Yeah, but he used an italic pen and he wrote at speed, so when you actually get down to look at the details, it's sometimes quite difficult to see exactly what the note heads are. And he'd make mistakes as well. Because, I mean, he was actually notating a performance that he could hear in his head, so he wrote tremendously fast.
So you got 3 staves there for 2 hands.
Yeah, he always used 4 staves, at least 4 staves, and towards the end, I mean, if you turn to the fugue, it's on 6 staves.
Can we turn? Sorry.
It's right at the end. I'll show you. Yeah, but if you just get, this is easy compared with the bulk of the piece. Something like that, for example, that's the middle movement. There are some things in here that are so hard that they're unprecedented really in organ music. That's just a pedal toccata. That's not difficult. But well, I mean, compared with some of the other stuff. If I just move on, there's business here.
So you're putting this onto finale?
Yeah. Well, I'm actually working at Symphony 3 at the moment because in 1988 and 91 I produced a hand copy of something. Things like this. When you look at the rhythmic complexity of this, it's about here, but here things start to get very tense. Fours, fives, threes, 7, yeah, all at the same time.
Yeah, and it's just hard to read, isn't it?
Yeah. And you can tell he's excited as he's writing it because it gets less and less clear.
Did he play organ?
No, but he played his own piano pieces.
He must have had a tremendous brain.
Yeah. His friend said that if it had been necessary for him to earn a living as a concert pianist, then the 20th century pianism would have been very different from what it is now.
Oh, there you go, look at this.
It's got my registration
This is
markings
you
in it.
writing it. That's a huge improvement.
Yeah, that's page 1. Yeah, I've done that. So it's
All these are your registration.
Yeah, they're all registration marks.
and
Yeah.
Manuals, yeah.
Yeah.
That's really neat.
You see, even at the beginning, what's he given us? He's given us the themes. He doesn't even say how loud it is.
Yeah, there's
nothing there.
Well, I guess people who tag this would going to know what to do.
That's
aren't they?
what he said, actually.
Yeah.
Yeah. Serenity. This is all first movement, but this is about at the same level of difficulty as Symphony 1. It gets much harder after this.
It's beautifully written. How long does this take you to do?
It took 3.5 years to do this, but I'm setting it all again now because there needs to be a critical edition now.
But you put this onto finale now, right?
Yeah.
Shame you couldn't just scan this in and let it do it.
Yeah, but I've changed the way I work now. I used to think that everything he wrote was gospel, so if he'd written a D or what looked like a D, I put a D in. But now I know that actually he was notating a performance and he'd make mistakes.
You writ this by hand, right?
Yeah.
It's really clean, isn't it? It's really so clear.
It got better as I went on. Here's the middle. Yes, it's the middle movement now. Yeah, goes on and on and on. So, some of it is registered. Rhythm there.
23.
Yeah, 23. Yeah, if I turn to variation 43A. That was written in 1931. It's organ music written in Britain that looks like that.
Incredible. How did you find out about him?
Well, I found the big red score of Symphony 1 when I was a student at the RAN. I just saw it sitting on the top of the, you remember standing in the library. It was up there, on that top shelf there. That's where I saw it first of all.
Gosh, that was a memorable day.
It was, I remember it, yeah, clearly.
Wow.
Yeah, it must have been October 1979.
Wow, turning point.
Yeah. A defining moment. On and on. But you can see quite clearly how what the rhythms are doing and how dense it all is and how busy. He saves the craziest stuff till last. I mean, you have to remember that this movement is 3 hours and 40 minutes long, and within 5 minutes or so of the end of this, he expects you to do things like this. That's quick. And then things like this. two different species of quintuplet going on at the same time. 5 in the time of 4 against 5 in the time of 3 against natural crotchets in the pedal.
Well, Terry, that's amazing.
It's nearly impossible. I find that so hard to play.
I'm glad we heard you say something like that.
It's on the brink of impossible.
Whoa.
And it would be hard if the piece was 10 minutes long, but it's not. It's 3 hours and 40 minutes long. You're
But I
already
don't get
knackered
knackered.
by the time you get to that bit. Yeah, and here's the last movement. First symphony, yeah.
And you're going to record a second one
Yeah.
and a third one.
Yes,
And you've got to get all done by 2013.
by 2013.
2013.
Yeah.
That's a lot of work, actually.
It is a lot of
Yeah,
work.
people
I mean,
think, oh, it's a long way away, but it's not, is it?
it's not at all. No, the music is so hard.
Yeah.
I've put about 2,500 hours into learning the second and third movements of the Second Symphony, and even with that amount of time, one movement alone was barely ready for last Sunday. It's the hardest piece there is. I mean, there's nothing like it, really.
How do audiences react to this?
Well, they like it.
They've got to be prepared,
Yeah.
though, for what they're coming for, haven't they? They're
Yeah,
not going to go
yes,
along and
yes.
listen to some,
Yeah, I mean, you've got
Max
to know.
Reger looks like Walt Disney, doesn't
Yeah,
he?
yeah. Well, that's a very good way of putting it, actually, yes. Although, actually, I like Walt Disney a lot.
So do I. Snow White.
Yeah. Oh, fantastic.
Yeah.
Fantastic, yes, yeah.
But I mean, how do you prep an audience for this? Because this is pretty heavy, isn't it?
Okay, well, let's start at the other end. I mean, a lot of the people who come to hear Sorabji are Sorabji fans. I mean, they fly in from all over the world to hear these pieces.
Yeah.
They look forward their entire lives to hearing something that's never been performed. They fly in from all over the place.
Yeah. Are the organ symphonies in print?
Symphony 1 is in print.
Yeah.
Symphony 1 is in print. Symphony 1 was printed by Kerwin in 1925 with funds provided from Sorabji's father.
Mm-hmm.
500 copies, I think, were printed, and it only sold out in about 1989, so it took an awfully long time to sell those copies. They're collector's items now, and when you see the beauty of the engraving, it's an extraordinary piece of artwork. I mean, there are lots of misprints in it. I've had to correct all those from the manuscript. But the rhythms in particular, when you see an engraver writing semi-engravers chords 13 in the time of 8, for example, or something like that, and 7 in the time of 4 in another voice, to think that kind of thing was set up by an engraver in 1925 is really amazing. He must have had nightmares about it. Symphonies 2 and 3 are not printed. His father died in 1932, and that was effectively the end of any funding for publication.
Wow.
So the last Sorabji to be officially in print was the big piano piece Opus Clavicemballisticum from 1930, and Organ Symphony 2 was completed in 1932, at about the same time as the death of his father. So that's manuscript only, and Symphony 3 also manuscript only, and all the mature works
Right.
only in manuscript, with the exception of one small piano piece that was published in 1987.
So you're at the end of the project, you're going to have these in print. Have you got a publisher who's going to?
The Sorabji Music Archive will issue them. Yeah,
Wow.
it's I'm setting them all up in Finale.
Yes.
Which
So
is,
you're doing that.
Yes. I'm.
You're
It's a
actually-
one-man band. I'm doing the whole lot. I'm doing the editing process. There'll be critical editions as well. So each volume, each symphony will have a copy of the manuscript involved, and a computer set clean score, and a performing score, in which I suggest editorial registration and that kind of thing, because particularly with the second and third symphonies, Sorabji in most cases gave us only the notes and occasionally dynamics. Very few registration marks. He left that up to the player. The fugue from Symphony 2, for example, which plays for 2 hours, except for the final FFF, there is no dynamic mark at all. So you have to effectively orchestrate the whole thing over a 2-hour period for the organ. It's a big triple fugue. A lot of work.
I mean, what type of organ would be able to play this music?
A big English romantic organ is best. In 1929, Sorabji reviewed an organ recital at Liverpool Anglican Cathedral. So he heard the organ in the building which was still unfinished. So the acoustic wasn't as dark then as it is now, and the organ could be heard very clearly. And he admired big
sound.
romantic instruments
That's
like
got
that.
the spring-operated swell pedal, hasn't it?
Has it? Does it still
In
have
Liverpool.
that? It might have, yes, I can't remember.
So I'm just thinking, where are you going to choose to record these works? Have you got an organ in mind?
I've got several organs in mind. Altaris Records, who will record the second and third symphonies and my reissue of the first symphony. There'll be a new edition of that as well. They're based in the States, so we could go to the States. Nearby, there are good instruments which would do it. The Holyrood Stirling is a possibility. Nice quiet church, set back from the road, so there's no traffic noise. Paisley Abbey, possibly, if we record at night. That's just being restored now. That's a possibility. There are numerous.
Did he have a favourite organ? Did he have an organ he had in mind when he wrote it?
Sorabji, well, in the introduction to Symphony 3, he does cite Liverpool Anglican Cathedral
right,
as being
okay.
the ideal instrument,
Yeah.
or the Albert Hall. He liked the Royal Albert Hall organ as well. Another organ which he reviewed.
Yes.
Mm.
That's quite a project. That really is.
Mm.
That is amazing. So everything done by 2013. We look forward to seeing that.
Everything done by 2013. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
So after that, what are the plans?
Sleep for 100 years, I think.
It's going to be hard, isn't it, to find? You might want to do something completely like an album of ragtime, just to completely change the palette.
That is possible, actually, yes.
Yes.
I find myself more and more fascinated by early Spanish organ music, so I might completely go in the opposite direction. I've done very little work with historical instruments,
Yeah.
certainly no recording work at all, so that's a possibility. There are other composers I'd quite like to investigate. Claude Loyola Olgen, for example, the Swedish composer. There are several unplayed organ works there. I might move into that kind of thing.
Yeah. You are great. You really are.
Well, keeps me occupied. It keeps me out. I need something to do between visits to the pub, you see, because I find that when the pubs close, I can't get in.
You love your whiskey too. You know about whiskey.
To a certain extent, yes. I have friends who know even more, but...
Kevin, thank you so much
it's a pleasure.
for joining us.
Okay,
Thank you.
Thanks.
We're going to start with a favourite with the organ, one of our favourites here, Highland Cathedral.
This. I had a really interesting experience 3 weeks ago. Never had it in my life.
What was that?
My portrait was painted
Oh, how lovely.
by
You
a
got
local artist group, 13 of them.
13 people doing it at once?
So they were, yes, so they were in a circle. So some have got my profile.
Yes.
2 sessions,
Yes.
2.5 hours each.
Wow. I'm sitting in St Mary's Church in Beaumaris. It is a beautiful church. It is so serene, and I'm going to be playing the opening concert in the Beaumaris Festival. Rector, Reverend, Fairlamb, whatever, and you can correct me, please. Thank you very much for joining. Neil, that's much beautiful. Right. Neil, thank you for joining us this morning. Just like to ask you a couple of questions so you can enlighten our audience about what exactly a church like this does in this day and age. What does St Mary's Church do?
The church itself, of course, is 14th century. The bit we're sitting in is a century later, is 15th, but the majority of the church was built in 1330, when Beaumaris was a garrison town. The last of Edward I's castles to control the Welsh was built just a few yards away, and then Edward I of England, he built these town walls and had it garrisoned with obviously soldiers and then English merchants, and the church followed that. And with the legacies of this wonderful tradition and history, but we've also got to be contemporary in 2007, and we're very fortunate here that the church is right in the centre of the town. There's lots of big events here, Mayor's Sunday with the new mayor, and all the uniformed scouts and guides and brownies and all the ex-military people and so on. There's a lot of processions like that, but it actually brings people together, and Remembrance Sunday for the war dead and so on. the yacht club, the festival that you're going to be playing in. These bring a lot of people from outside as well. So the church is a focus for all of this. And I find that I have, just by being the parish priest, I have quite a high profile in the town, even with people who don't actually come to church, except perhaps for the rites of passage in life. There's a good feel that the church is part of the centre of the town.
Do you look after other churches? 5. And where are they?
This is the way of things now. There used to be 4 or 5 priests, where there's only me now. And I have Penmont, which is a 12th century church, 4 miles away, and 3 others, one of which is in a field with no electricity. So we only have services in the summer.
So no organ.
And there's a harmonium.
Oh, right.
There's a hand-pedalled harmonium, yes, which makes a curious sound.
This church here has got so much history. What is the oldest? The oldest part goes back to when?
1330. Yes,
13.
The castle was built. Beaumaris is 2 words really in French. The beau, the beautiful, marais, which is the marsh. It was the sea marsh. So there was nothing here at all until Edward I decided to build his castle. He drained the sea marsh. So the castle is unusually built on flat land to guard the Menai Straits, to guard the sea here. Most castles are built on high, rocky ground. And the beautiful sea marsh. And the castle first, and then the town grew up. 1330, and then a century later, the organ is 1806, 1807.
The organ goes back to 1806.
1806, and it was given by Viscount Buckley, the last Lord Buckley.
Yes.
Although a branch of the family is still here. And it's been altered a little bit over the years, but the casing is original.
Really?
And 2 years ago it had a major overhaul. So we think it's in good shape.
Has it always been that colour? Was that new to paint it like that?
It was new colour. It had been painted a bluey colour before, but we thought the green was a bit more.
Yes,
actually
it's
restful
quite medieval looking, isn't it?
Yes,
it is.
And I'm glad they gilded the pipes and the swags at the top again.
Oh.
Actually, they had to gild the pipes in situ because they were too delicate to take to Liverpool. And when our organist, who is a lovely man, our church organist, he's a lovely man, but he's bald. And he started playing the newly restored organ, and little bits of the gold flake from the paint, from the painting of the pipes, was cascading down on his head. So they had to come and re-lacquer the pipes to fix the paint.
Looking around
Would
the
you like
church.
some gold?
No, I'm all right.
Yes.
What's your most favourite part of this church? It must be hard to pick, but what would you?
Actually, where we're sitting, Carol, these seats, I don't know if you can see them. These are seats for the monks of the Middle Ages, and they're actually called misericords, from the word misericordia, meaning pity. And it was hard work for monks to be in church 7 times a day, singing the praises of God, standing, which most of the service was done. And as that got more and more difficult, they were allowed these sort of half seats, so that these little ledges you can see they could lean on, and they were standing and sitting at the same time. And it gave the medieval carpenters, and there were craftsmen here, the building of the castle, the building of the church, there was a nucleus of medieval craftsmen here. They had some fun carving, a bit like Chaucer's Canterbury Tales, a range of characters of medieval life. So there are monks, nuns, merchants, and a man with a barrel of beer on his head, a lady selling butter from churns.
How many are there?
There are 22.
22?
Yes.
Wow, they are
Yes.
they're magnificent, aren't they? They
Yes.
really are. And they go back to when?
They're early 15th.
Ooh,
Early 15th
that's
century.
old.
Yes.
No, the oldest, not to be depressing, but what is the oldest grave in the church? Is that inside or is that outside?
The oldest graves wouldn't necessarily have had headstones. You had to be wealthy, in a sense, to afford a headstone. There haven't been any burials in the churchyard since the 19th century, when the churchyard was full.
So where did
sadly, there were things like plagues in,
Yeah.
in Beaumaris, and quite a high number of people died and were buried. The oldest grave I found is from 1616, with a readable date. But there will be some that are older.
the Beaumaris Festival? How many festivals have there been?
This is the 22nd now in 2000,
Every year?
2007, yes.
Every year.
So it's, yes. Last year it came of age. Last year was the 21st.
Right.
So
And it's a week
22.
long?
So it's a week long, yes, and it was one of the first, I think, of these festivals. Now there are quite a few. It's getting harder to keep a high standard because of the costs and so on, and for a week, but we get some support, and it's quite an established tradition, and I'm glad that you're going to start this year's festival in church. I mean, we have other venues, but I think obviously an organ recital in church is very appropriate.
My father was from Holyhead, and his first language was Welsh.
Yes.
Is that still a very strong language here in North Wales?
It varies. I mean, Anglesey is pretty strongly Welsh, and certainly in the north of the island, it would be the language of the majority of people. Wherever on the coast, there's a large number of retired people, from England who've had holidays here and then choose to retire. But all children now, at the primary school, up to the age of 11, are taught in Welsh. And then they can choose a Welsh or an English-based secondary 11 to 18 education. And it's actually in good shape, the Welsh language. And, of course, if you begin as a child, you can be bilingual so much more easily than if you learn it as an adult. This is an alabaster tomb. Now, alabaster is a type of stone that looks like marble. And at this time, 1490, we have a date for these two characters, alabaster was concentrated in the middle of England, a production around Nottingham, and then it was made there and shifted here, so that it's quite a thought how they would have got these two characters. And he is William Buckley, this man, and his wife, and he was Deputy Constable of the Castle. And we can date him because he's wearing a sallet, which is a lighter type of fighting helmet that was brought in at that time, and also around his neck is a collar with an S, an inverted S, an S the other way around, which meant that he was a supporter of the House of Lancaster in the civil war between Lancaster and York in the later Middle Ages. Another interesting thing, which I think is quite subtle, is that this lion, he looks like a bit of a friendly dog, but this lion, also a symbol of strength and all the rest of it, that his feet are resting on, with the spurs, actually obscures the fact that his wife was slightly taller. And in the kind of symbolism of the time, the male always had to be superior in every way, normally, but I'm glad in this case that they've actually shown that his wife was just a few inches taller than he was, and they've preserved the truth. Sadly, bits have disappeared over the years because alabaster, this marble type of stone, was thought to be a cure for all kinds of things like toothache and skin diseases. You rub your skin with a piece of alabaster, so I'm afraid people did come and chip bits off, together with graffiti, and all kinds of tourists over the years have somehow felt they wanted to make their mark.
Family is still living.
Yes, the last Viscount died in 1822 without any children, and the family line passed to another branch of the family, so the direct line died out, and they became the Williams Buckleys. It was a sort of the related branch, and they're still here. And the present Sir Richard, the eldest son is always called Richard. So the present baronet, Sir Richard, is the 14th.
And they come to church here?
Yes, he comes about once a month, or more often, and he sits in one of the miserables. Well, right. Do come in. Yes.
They're all done.
They're all done. No. Sorry, great.
Yes, that's it.
Okay. I will explain if you like. What we've got here is the tomb of the daughter of the King of England, which is very exciting. And she was Joan, Princess Joan, and she was the daughter, the natural daughter, the legitimate daughter of King John, bad King John of Magna Carta. And she was married to Llywelyn ap Iorwerth, the Prince of North Wales, as a political marriage. They were married when they were very young, so it was like to keep peace between England and North Wales. And she died in 1237. So she's actually older than the church, because she originally wasn't laid to rest here. She was laid to rest in a monastery a couple of miles away. And then that closed. Her stone coffin, in Latin it's called a sarcophagus, was moved here. And there are no bones inside. The lid got detached at some stage. But it is a royal tomb. And her husband, Llywelyn ap Iorwerth, is buried in the Conwy Valley, not too far from here. And that's his standard, that was his royal standard as a Prince of North Wales. And she's buried with her hands in prayer, and her body is like called a wyvern, like an eagle, which is a symbol of loyalty, at her feet. In fact, they weren't either of them too loyal to each other, but that's another story.
What about this tiny?
Now this is not rare, but it's very unusual, and it looks like a sentry box. It's made of deal, type of wood, and it was for one of two uses. We think that the most likely use is that it was for me, or if I lived in the 18th century, it would have been outside in the churchyard, and it was to keep me dry during funerals, of which there were a lot. Don't forget, in the 18th century I would have worn a wig, and lots of robes, and it was to keep me dry during funerals.
How did we move then?
Oh, it was fairly light, and it would have been kept outside. The other possible use is that it was for guarding graves after burial, and it was for a watchman to be paid to guard graves, because there was, a horrible tradition of digging graves up, whether it was Burke and Hare, when bodies were used for medical experiments and things like that, but also sometimes people were buried with possessions, and it wasn't unknown for people to come rooting around in graves. So there certainly were traditions of paying someone to guard a grave until a headstone or a tombstone could be laid in place.
Why would that stop the tombstone, stop it being people being dug up?
Well, if there was a tombstone laid the length of the grave, then that somehow sort of would be difficult to shift for your average grave robber.
That's fascinating.
But it's brought, it's kept in here now just to stop it wearing away. But it's 18th century.
Oh, that's real, Same age as Mozart's time,
Yes. Well, he had a pauper's grave.
I know he did.
Yes, so yes, probably nobody cared about digging him up. What a terrible end. I mean, one or two people followed him, and otherwise it was just...
I guess they only know roughly where he was buried.
Yes.
There's just no hole in that. I guess they only know roughly where he was buried.
Yes.
There's just no hole.
Well, I mean, there are lots of burials here. What happened is, of course, they decided some years ago to move a lot of the headstones to the side to make a garden. You
They
know,
do
which I
that a
think
lot.
was reason. Yes, because they were graves where there's now no family to be traced.
Yes.
You see, so it wasn't. And as I say, there haven't been any burials here since about 1880 because it is actually full. It's
Yes.
just that the headstones themselves. We thought it was best to create a garden.
Yes. Lovely.
And this was the National School was it was a charity it was a charity school before there was really a national system of education. Until that didn't happen until 1870, and it was for boys and girls, the two
Divided.
entrances. And the interesting thing is that now the building has been turned into 2 cottages,
Oh, very
and
nice.
it's in fact a brother and a sister
Oh, really?
who live on either side.
That's lovely, isn't it?
And there I've got in the National
No
Library,
dogs
in
allowed there.
Aberystwyth, there are
Oh, yeah.
records of the National School.
Yes.
And it was very much the 19th century idea. Everyone has to be fitted for their station in life. So, boys were to be honest labourers and workmen, and girls were to be seamstresses and needlewomen, and they would all
Yes.
be happy and know where they were. And this was the jail.
This was a jail. Wow.
And since you've just been in Birmingham,
Yes.
well, the architect of this jail was Joseph Hanson, who built Birmingham Town Hall,
Oh,
the
right.
big town hall.
And he did Victoria Terrace.
Yes, yes. And this was an early commission for him to build the jail,
1829.
1829. And then, because he built this, he got to know the local stone. And the Anglesey marble is called, not the marble of the alabaster there, but there was a local type of limestone called millstone grit, quite hard.
Yeah.
And the Menai Bridge is built from that stone.
Yes.
And when he built Birmingham Town Hall, he wanted the stone from here, and that was taken by ship and canal to Birmingham. And there is the story of the last man to be hanged, public hanging, and he was led out, and he was expecting a reprieve, which didn't come. And as he was led out, he cursed the clock.
Oh, no.
Time was running out. This side, you see, he cursed the clock.
Yes.
And this is a legend, of course, but ever afterwards, it was said that this side of the four faces, that this side of the clock told a slightly different time.
Really?
And apparently there was something in this, because some years ago, I don't know, 15, 20 years ago, whenever, they corrected the action of the clock. There was indeed a slight, it was 2 or 3 minutes out. They corrected the action of the clock on this side. And people were very angry. You should never interfere with a good curse.
So where was it? Where was he actually hanged? Where was
Well,
it? Was that-
there is a place near where the boats are called Gallows Point.
yeah.
So there may have been a gallows or a gibbet. A gibbet, was where a hanged
Yeah.
corpse would have been left as a kind of public warning.
It is a grim wall, isn't
But it's a very grim.
It is
very
a grim,
and it's,
austere, isn't
another
it?
time.
Wow.
This is technically called Steeple Lane, but it's known locally as Jail Lane.
Jail
Yes,
Lane,
yeah,
okay.
yes.
Yeah. Well, that is. I didn't realise there was a jail here. Wow. Reverend Neil, thank you very
Pleasure.
much for joining us this morning. Would you just say something in Welsh to our viewers and then translate it?
Wel, croeso I Sir Bourne, gyda phob bendith. I just said you'd be very welcome to Anglesey every time, and I just wished you all blessing. Ac edrych ymlaen at eich cyngerdd and mis Mai. Looking forward to your concert carol in May.
Thank you very much.
Super.
I'm in the land of song, beautiful Wales. I love history, and I'm in the presence of somebody making history. Dr. Carl Jenkins, thank you very much for joining us.
It's my pleasure.
When did you know that you wanted to be a musician?
Well, I kind of drifted throughout my early life. My father was a local church, well, chapel. There's a distinct difference here.
Yeah.
But a chapel organist and choir master. And he taught me music from an early age. He was a school teacher by profession. He taught music and art, which is a kind of a nice combination, really. And he began by teaching me the piano and theory from a very, very early age. During my childhood, as I said, I played piano, then I learned recorder. And then when I went to the local grammar school, I learned to play the oboe, which was the first instrument I was kind of really good at. So it's by a process of elimination. I ended up at the age of 21 having played the oboe at school, National Youth Orchestra of Wales, doing music academically at school at O level and A level, it's called here. And then went to university in Cardiff to do music, still not knowing exactly what I was going to do. And then I went to the Royal Academy. During my teenage years, I fell in love with jazz and became very competent because jazz appealed to me at that time because it was essentially tonal music. And at that time, I was kind of creative in that I wanted to write, but I didn't see any avenue for me within the parameters of what was modern classical composition at that time. Because unless it was kind of what we laughingly call squeaky gate music, there was no kind of outlet for one to be creative and get any exposure.
Yeah.
So that's what attracted me to jazz. It was vibrant, contemporary, very rhythmic, but still essentially tonal. So composition-wise, I was a jazz composer before I was any other kind of composer. And when I left the Royal Academy of Music in London, I initially worked as a jazz musician for a number of years.
So when did you kind of know that you wanted to compose? Was that later on, or did you start composing when you were young?
Well, it depends on what within which musical style you mean. I suppose the first compositions, I was forced to do certain compositions at certain periods of my life because of the academic strictures and what was needed for, certain examinations. But the first compositions I did for my own love, if you like, my own creativity, would have been jazz compositions, which would have been from the age of, not that young really, 17, 18, 19, I suppose.
Do you still have those copies of music?
No, but I remember some of the tunes.
Do you?
Some are okay, some are not so good, so.
You are a true crossover artist, a Gershwin of our time.
Yeah, but I don't like the word.
You don't like the word?
Well, I accepted it because that's what it is. But what's kind of happened is that I was trained classically, and then I've been a bit of a musical tourist, really. As I said, trained classically, then I went into jazz, then kind of progressive rock with a band called Soft Machine and Nucleus. And then thereafter I wrote music for advertising, which is very instructive and also educational in a way for me, because the music styles one had to work in kind of varied from week to week or day to day. One day it could be a symphony orchestra, the next like a rock trio or whatever. And also a lot of ethnic music came into it. People would want some Indian ragas on something, or some Chinese flutes or whatever. It can be anything, bagpipes, whatever. So one had to kind of research these different areas of music and different genres. And I think by assimilating all these different styles, it went into the kind of melting pot. And when I kind of reinvented myself in a way in the mid-90s with Eddie Amos, all these different influences, I think, came out in what I did and what I've been since, in that essentially classical, but drawing on and from different cultures. And I think that's been important in what I do. So in that sense, I suppose I am a true crossover artist, or composer, in that I've drawn from different musical and ethnic styles.
You're right, but I'm saying, the word crossover artist is something that's kind of not a term that we like to use, because I think, would I be right in saying in Bach's time, at that time, they didn't think of music like that. Bach composed whatever he had to compose for.
Well, absolutely, yes, exactly. I feel very strongly about that, because they were all kind of jobbing composers. Bach wrote, the Brandenburg because he was told to do so by whoever it was. You know, he wrote cantatas for the church because they were needed for the next Sunday.
Yeah.
And similarly Mozart with operas, whatever commissions were, you know.
Do we know when people started segmenting music? Because not with the segmentation, you get the stigma too, don't you, with the different musicians playing different types of music.
Yeah.
They didn't have it then.
No, they didn't. And it was much more honest music, and people looked forward to first performances because it was something refreshing and exciting to listen to.
Yes.
Nowadays, the usual first performance is played once, never heard again, and people have a polite clap at the end, and there's no excitement about it. So, well, I don't know when it changed. It was probably during maybe a romantic era,
Yeah.
maybe possibly post-Beethoven, certainly I'd have thought. But even Richard Strauss's operas were looked forward to, you know, like Rosenkavalier, things like that. They were successful. There were anomalies like Wagner, Tannhauser, that was hated at first. But he was still of his day. Most of his music was appreciated, I think, as it was being written.
Yes.
But it's like, I've heard people going on about the Brandenburgs and Bach meant, you know, minimal combinations, it should be done with one cello, what I don't know, you know.
Yeah.
And my attitude, how do you know that? I mean, it maybe that's all he could get.
Yes.
That's all he was on offer to him. Maybe there's
Yeah.
only so much money to be spent on that combination.
Absolutely. I mean, I've read that he never really heard his music properly because they didn't have the standard of musicians that we have now in the later years of his life. I mean, so he never really heard the St. Matthew Passion as we can enjoy it now. That's really sad.
Yeah.
It is.
Absolutely. I mean, there's a story that Richard Strauss, when he wrote Metamorphosen for 23 solo strings, or 23 strings, Karen wanted to do it with bigger numbers when he was young, so he approached Strauss and he said, if Karen wants more players, let him have them. You know, so I think you've got to be pragmatic and practical in a way, you know.
Yes.
Without being snooty and stuffy, snobbish about it. Yeah.
Yes. Is there a composer as you grew up, you know, learning music? Is there somebody you had as an idol?
No, not really, other than the usual people. You know, Bach, Mozart, Beethoven. And then I subsequently had a huge predilection for later, like romantic Germanic, Austro-Germanic music like Mahler, Strauss, Wagner. But then apart from that, I was growing up with kind of Miles Davis and Thelonious Monk and all kinds of jazz players, but also composers as well, who I, you know, had a huge kind of buzz out of listening to.
Yeah.
So it was a during my teenage years and through university and the Royal Academy, it was like a dual love affair, if you like, with two different styles. But to me it was all music, and it still is, you know.
I mean, from playing the organ, I play all types of organ music. I see music as a language.
Yes.
And I'm not very good at languages, but you show me an organ, I'm quite happy and I can communicate. I see music like that. It communicates to the whole world.
Yeah, it does. And that's why I feel very strongly also that composers should make an emotional connection with an audience. And too often, latterly, latter half of the 20th century, that's not the case. As I said, they write music for themselves. I'm not saying you should write down, but if you don't have that emotional connection and move people, I don't see the point of it.
Yeah. They said that,
pointless.
They said that Handel was a composer of the people because he knew what people wanted to hear. That's you. I mean, you know what people want to hear. That's what you're supplying.
Well, if I do, it's intuitive. You know, it's not a question, oh, I'll do this, or that's a bit difficult for the people, and I'll do this, you know.
But you're of the people, isn't it? Because you enjoy what they enjoy.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah.
But it's a genuine, what I write is what I am.
Yeah.
It's not tailored.
Yes.
I'm not second-guessing what people will like, you know. I write what appeals to me. I want to work something out and create something or work at it. Once I think, oh, that's okay, you know, it's my own judgment, intuitive judgment. It's intuition based on a lot of training, obviously, like, you know, harmony, counterpoint, usual things.
Yeah.
So it's not an amateur kind of guess at what I'm doing, you know. I mean, it's well informed.
Yes.
But it's still an intuitive, natural appraisal of what I'm writing.
Yes.
And I think when I've reached the point that it appeals to me, it possibly will appeal to others as well.
Well, I think that's why your music is so brilliant, because you're your own critic. If you're happy with it, you're not trying to please somebody else. If you try and please yourself, it's hard to please yourself, I'm sure. I bet you have tremendously high standards.
I don't know about that. Well, I don't know. I don't see it like that. I mean, I work on something
Yeah.
until
You
it
know,
works,
Yes.
and then it's ticked up. That's fine. Then it's not.
Yeah.
But it can be agonising. Yes. I mean,
Yeah.
some things kind of write themselves, and others take, forever.
Yeah.
A lot of trial and error.
When it is trial and error, do you think the end result been something that you're really proud of, or do you hear the painful process that you went through to get that?
No, I'm usually fairly pleased at the end,
Yes.
and otherwise I wouldn't have got to the end. If you see what I mean. If I wasn't pleased with it as it was being written,
Yeah.
being accumulated, if you like.
Yeah.
So by definition, by getting to the end,
Yeah.
it means I'm pleased with it.
Yeah. When you're actually walking, I mean, if you go out for a walk.
No, I don't.
All right, I'm sorry.
I don't mean I don't walk. You can ask, do I think of ideas?
Yeah,
Music? No,
yeah.
I don't. No.
Oh, just looking at the view here, which is really spectacular. Do you ever? Well, how do the?
Well, I need to sit down and actually physically start working
Really?
usually on a piano
Yeah.
to search out ideas.
Yes.
I don't walk through the woods or over the mountains and like Elgar used to
Yes. Yeah.
compose in his head.
Yeah.
I don't do that. I mean, I don't have that kind of degree of that kind of facility, mental or otherwise. But I need to physically sit down and do it, and then it comes. And the more I do it, the easier it is. So.
But that's a true professional. I remember my piano teacher telling me that, saying a real professional is somebody who sits down to practice even if they don't feel like it. They don't have to wait for the inspiration.
Yes.
They work. But so you have a set routine of sitting down to compose.
I usually start very early, sometimes 5 o'clock, which is a great time of day because it's quiet and peaceful, and I do a few hours, and that might be it for the day. Sometimes I do some more in the late afternoon. I don't write in the evenings or kind of mid-afternoon usually, unless there's pressure on for a deadline. But I'm pretty good. Perhaps it's to do with all the media work I've done, but I'm pretty good with deadlines. I've never had a problem in not kind of meeting one. But as we just discussed, I mean, all the not I'm calling me putting myself in their category, but great composer at Bach mode, so they all always wrote to deadlines because the piece was needed by a certain date. And I think deadlines are useful because if you don't have one, you'd fiddle forever.
You waffle on with yeah. So a typical day is getting up very early, sitting at the keyboard at the piano, and then composing for a number of hours. It's probably exhausting work. Time you've done 3 hours, 2 hours, 3 hours.
But when it's going well, time kind of goes quickly. But when it's not, it drags. But the process is quite fast now because I used to do the old manuscript and pencil, but I now use a computer system. I mean, I came to computers really late in life. Really, I must have been about in my late 40s. On to full score, with a piano part as a template, but then I kind of orchestrate as I go along. So it's not separated. With the Arm Man, the text was suggested by Guy Wilson, called the Master of the Royal Armouries. The Royal Armouries being it's an institution. They have a war museum in Leeds and they run the Tower of London in London. And they wanted to commission a piece that kind of told the history, told the horrors and the story of war and conflict from the beginning to the aftermath. And the tune from the court of Charles de Bod in Burgundy, 15th century tune, L'Homme Armé, was suggested as a basis for it. So that was the first. It's used twice in the piece, beginning and end. It's a piece that says "Beware of the armed man. He must be feared." It was very popular at the time, and I think it was used in about 30 different mass settings, including one by Palestrina. It's just a little fragment of a tune. So that was used in the first one. So that was my starting point. So he suggested all this text, which is non-denominational and universal. There's 4 mass movements, which kind of qualifies it as a mass: Sanctus, Benedictus, Agnus Dei, and Kyrie eleison. And then there's all text. There's a Mahabharata, which is a Hindu epic, a Muslim call to prayer, a poem by a Japanese poet who died as a result of the Hiroshima bomb, So it's an all-embracing universal work. So all this text was given to me and suggested. So at least I had this thing on which to hang the music, you know, so that was there as a framework, really.
Mm-hmm.
So I started with Loma and then worked through the text. So that's why it took about 10, 11 months. But some passages were quicker than others.
So if you read a text, would that you'd suddenly hear something? How would that work?
Yeah, well, it would.
Yeah.
When I say hear something, but
Right.
I'd look at it and fiddle on the piano and, you know, find some melodic fragment or harmonic progression or something that married well with the words, that enhanced what the words were about. So, and that's the way it kind of proceeded through the whole thing, really.
Historical texts play an important part in your work, obviously.
Latterly, yes. I mean, the Adi Amos project, which was my first comeback, if you like, after a period as a media composer, that consists of an invented language.
Yes.
Well, I say invented. Well, it is invented. I say language, but to the point in that, but it's not a language. It's a series of phonetics, really.
Yeah.
It's a bit like scat singing in jazz, when it's obviously organised so that the whole choir can sing it. But it's meaningless, and it's going back to the idea of using the human voice as an instrumental sound, and not as a conveyor of meaning.
Yeah.
So that, in conjunction with the ethnic percussion and the rest of it, created this Adi Amos kind of sound world, really. So for a period of time, when I was doing solely that, essentially from about 1995 to 2000, I set very little text. But then thereafter, since the Arm Man, it's completely reversed, and that was commissioned. And then other pieces, Requiem and the Stabat Mater, I'm doing now, and various other commissions have usually involved text.
Mm-hmm.
When they've been vocal, they've involved text, and put it like that. There have been some instrumental pieces I've written in the interim, but most of my choral works, if you like, do involve setting of traditional text, usually Latin.
How did the Adi Amos language come about? I mean, how did you mould that?
Well, I had this idea in I think it was about it was when I was writing media music, mainly television commercials, and the advertising agency in London, Abbott Mead Vickers, they wanted something that they called, for want of a better word, ethnic. You know, they wanted some kind of something that was hard to define, pin down, but sounded fresh and different. And I'd been toying with the idea of writing a piece of music that was based on kind of Western European classical principles with an orchestra, but where the vocal sound is more akin to tribal music, or ethnic music, if you like, for a general term, and not sounding like a trained European choir, or European or American or whatever, Western. So the idea was involving, and I'd written a couple of pieces, and then the other idea I had to enhance this was to use ethnic percussion that are not normally used in an orchestra, but use the percussion in a rhythmic sense, in that it provides a pulse, like drums do in jazz or in rock, to propel the music along. And this was the concept, and I'd written a couple of pieces. But when I was asked to do this commercial, I made a demonstration tape of one of them, which it wasn't called anything then, it became Adi Amos later. And this was presented and he liked it. So then it became the music on a Delta Airline commercial that was kind of global.
Yeah.
And it kind of happened from there.
Yeah.
And Virgin got involved, they wanted to release it as a single, so I suggested, well, great, but we'd like to make an album, around the whole thing.
Yeah.
Which we did. So then I developed some of the other ideas and wrote some more.
Yeah.
And that's what we did. So, and then thus Adi Amos was born, And then it didn't have a name until the marketing people at Virgin got hold of me. And then as usual, meeting around the table. So they decided to take one of the words out of one of the songs, which was Adi Amos. It started Adi Amos was
yes.
the
What does Adi Amos mean?
Funnily enough, it approximates to "We Will Draw Near," but I did Latin in school, but it was not intentional that it meant that. I mean, it just sounded an evocative word.
Yes.
I mean, I could have been in big trouble. It could have meant anything, It could have offended someone of some other religious faith or something, and I'd have been in deep trouble.
How about the language? How did you? Because you're saying it's a new language, right?
Well, it's not a language because it doesn't mean anything. Yeah, but
Yeah.
it is a string of nonsense, really.
But it works. It really works.
It does work. Yes, but the way I do it, it's no kind of.
Did you think that you thought, as you say, the string of nonsense? I would have said it that, but did you come up with the actual syllables and everything?
Yes, I did. Yeah,
Oh,
I just write
yeah.
a melodic phrase and think of words to go with it.
Yes.
And if it's like African, I think of, if it's tribal, the two kind of strands to the vocal sound, and essentially one is kind of soft and ecclesiastical,
Yes.
kind of mellow sound,
Mhm.
and the other is a very tribal where the girls sing very harshly hard, with like forte, very loud,
Yeah.
without any vibrato,
Mhm.
and it gives it that kind of, in a way it's almost childlike, the way children sing, but because it's adult it sounds kind of universally tribal,
Mhm.
almost African, I'd say.
Mm.
So when it's that kind of technique, I use lots of hard consonants like maka and edgy kind of sounds,
Yeah.
and with kind of strong vocal delivery, if you like.
Yeah.
And then the more ecclesiastical bits are kind of more approximate to Latin, and I mean, people find all kinds of weird things. Some people think it sounds Polynesian, some of it, and kind of
Yeah.
South Sea Islandish, and
Yeah.
but as I say, I mean, it's a bit of a musical tourist route. The text, you see, funny, I've used these Finnish Adema singers frequently on concerts, and they're great. And there's one phrase in one of the lines. They had the president of Finland he had a nickname, Mala. It was his, I don't know, nickname.
Mm.
And there was this line in one of the songs, and he started laughing about it, and they said, "Why are you laughing?" Well, he said to them, "It's when Mala," then it said something else in it. And it said to us, it sings as we want our president to paint the wall, in Finnish.
I guess it's like looking at a painting, isn't it? Like a very modern piece of art, and you see into it.
Yeah, well, I
What-
suppose so, yeah.
Yeah, look, you see out of it what you want to
Well,
see.
it is, yeah. But to them, this was a real kind of a vocal kind of oral, realization of what it sounded like.
Yes. Your music has affected me personally. It's moved me tremendously. Do you know of other people that maybe have written to you and told them how it's affected them? I mean, is there any
Yes.
interesting?
Well, I do get lots of kind of very humbling letters, actually. I'm humbling from my perspective,
Yeah.
that people were dying.
Mm.
A letter from a blind man who said I made him see again, in a kind of spiritual way,
Mhm.
And there's a string of those,
Mhm.
really, which I find not difficult to deal with, but I can't see how I can possibly have that effect, because I don't think I'm that great in a way, you know what I mean, compared to the masters of music. Right? So
You are a master
no,
of
I
music.
don't see it like that.
Well,
you
I
see,
do.
I'm just-
And a lot of people do. I do. When I played your music in public, I play a really serious program, whatever, play major works, whatever, play it, loads of things. One of your pieces, it's your piece, they come up and say, that was lovely, that really got through. I mean,
Yeah.
your music gets through to people, it really does.
Yeah, it obviously does, because as I say,
Yeah.
because of the correspondence I get, and it is very humbling. But I mentally I find it hard to make that leap where I'm responsible for being able to do that, or to have that effect on people. So it's very gratifying and humbling, and all those words that one can, can think of, really.
I don't think people like Beethoven and Bach, when they were writing and being received, they didn't know how good they were, and it takes history to look back and say, but to a lot of us musicians, we can see that you are one of those, really. And
Yes, but I don't see it, and I can't see it. And
well, I don't think I guess it doesn't really matter, does it? I
well,
mean,
no, but there is
yeah.
a huge school of people for whom my music is totally kind of anathema, really, because it's accessible,
yes,
and I can't see how anyone can write today in an accessible style, because it's not what we said earlier, joking like Squeaky Gate, and it's for those people, and critics are in that bracket.
yeah,
For them, it's always a vote of style over content. They can't see beyond the style and look at the content.
Yeah.
You know, so that does irritate me. That's one of the main things that annoys me, actually.
Yes.
But I'd rather have a connection with the, I was going to say common people, but it sounds a hopelessly, kind of superior term. I don't mean it in that sense, you know.
No, I mean, yeah, I
But
know what you mean.
I just mean to make a connection with an audience and
Yes.
to move them.
Doesn't matter what the critics
Yeah,
say; it's
that-
what the audience thinks.
Yes, yeah.
That's often what happens in competitions, isn't it? That
Yes.
the jury will give one prize and the audience will give another
Yes,
prize.
Yes, yeah.
The audience prize really is more important, isn't
Yes,
it?
yeah.
Say that one.
Yes.
Well, I mean, as Sibelius said, there was never a statue to a critic.
Yeah, yes, true, yes. I must remember that one, that's a good one. They wanted to put up a statue in Pesaro, I think, in southern Italy, to Rossini, when he was still alive. And they asked him how much, or he said how much it's going to cost, you know. And I can't remember what it was at the time, say £1 million.
Yeah.
He said, if you give me the £1 million, I'll go and stand in it myself.
How many gold discs are there here? I mean, there's lots of them
Oh,
around.
16 or 17, I think.
Well, that
Most of them are Adi Amos, and there's a couple for the Armed Man.
that says it all, you know.
Mm.
What are you working on at the moment, can I ask?
I'm working on a Stabat Mater, setting of the 13th century hymn to do with the crucifixion. Once again, in a sense, I've gone outside I've used the text of the original poem, and there's some other text from Babylon, which is now, which would be Iraq nowadays, so it has a resonance, and some current texts, all to do with grief. Very often when I research a piece, I ask for help, very often with text, and approach some academics I know. So when I researched the Stabat Mater, I had a very eminent Welsh poet called Graham Davis, who's quite unusual in that, for any poet anywhere actually, in that he's apparently, but I'm not a Welsh speaker, in that has equal facility in Welsh and English as a writer. You know, he's equally revered in both languages. But anyway, he did some research for me on the Stabat Mater for early text. And he has done for me, he's taken like an original text and put it in some poetic form, kind of rephrased it and redrafted it and put it in some rhythmic pattern that falls into what I'm doing. So that's kind of useful. So in that sense, I'm not a heavy academic, but I know where to go and rely on other people to source things for me.
You're sitting in your music room here, and it's in the beautiful scenery of Wales. Does musical Wales, the heritage, the whole package, that's important to you?
It is kind of important, but it's a very small part of the musical world, in the sense it's very often termed a musical nation, Wales. Well, in a certain way it is, which is essentially to do with singing and choral tradition, both mixed and male voice choirs, synonymous with Wales, South Wales in particular. Male voice choirs probably grew up, or almost certainly grew out of the Industrial Revolution and coal mining in South Wales, you know. So historically that's very important. There's lots of eminent singers come out of Wales. Bryn Terfel currently is like a world famous. I've worked with him. I've written something for him, and there are others. So in that sense, it is important in Wales. But as far as instrumental music goes, it's not significant in Wales. There are, a handful of celebrated Welsh players, very, very few really. So it's mainly a singing tradition that's important. I think I was exposed to, my father being a chapel organist and choir master, I was exposed to kind of congregational singing and kind of annual concerts they had in the chapel.
Yes. I mean, the Welsh hymns are lovely. I remember Llave and
Yes.
Cwm Rhondda. I mean,
Yes.
they're great hymns.
Well, they're stirring, emotional. They are
They
some
are.
very good tunes in there, yeah.
Oh, yeah.
So that's part of my kind of heritage, really, my upbringing. But it's only a small part of it because, there was, as I was growing up with my father and being influenced by the whole kind of classical repertoire, really, or listening to, because he had LPs as we had then, of all these great pieces, and he played the piano and taught me to a certain extent. So I was exposed to all this, and that occupied a bigger part of my life than the Welsh tradition did. And then subsequently, jazz occupied a bigger part in my life than the Welsh tradition ever did.
Music's been just totally absorbed you.
Mm.
Would you say what makes a good composer, or is just everybody's going to be different? I remember there's a story about Debussy where a student goes up to him and says to Debussy, "I compose really well. Do you think I should be a composer?" Debussy looks at him very seriously and says, "No." The student says, "Why?" "Because you asked me."
Yes, well, that's a good point.
Is there a...
It's like the Ravel Gershwin story, isn't it? About Gershwin went to Ravel for, he wanted some lessons, orchestration or something. And Ravel asked him, "How much do you earn?" And he told him, and he said, "I should be coming to you for lessons."
That's a good story. I guess there's not the ingredient.
No, I don't
can't-
know what makes a good composer. I don't,
No.
you know, it's not, by telling you that, I'm suddenly declaring I am one.
Well, you are.
Well, all right, then, but I don't see myself
No,
as that.
but-
But anyway, I think
Yeah.
there's lots of academics who could write a good, I know loads of them, who think they can do it, and who could write a good piece because they've studied harmony, form, counterpoint. Good musicians may be inherently, you know, good oral ability, whatever, and they could write a 4-part fugue, but ultimately it depends on like some kind of creative spark that is something there that connects with people and makes it memorable. And I don't know what makes something memorable or not.
Yeah.
You know, it's like why certain modern composers aren't memorable, and say, I don't know, Paul McCartney is.
Yes.
You know, and he's not trained or anything, isn't it? It's just an intuitive
It's
spark.
from the heart and not the head.
Yeah, and there's intuitive spark in there. See, that's what I find fascinating about Bach, really, because
Yeah.
you can analyze. He's one of the most academic composers ever.
Yeah.
All the quadruple counterpoint and all this, you can invert this way and that way, and all the fugues and inversions, but it all comes out as fantastic music.
Yeah.
At the end of the day, and that's important, and that's what moves people.
Yes.
Academically and intellectually, sort of on a as high a level as one could have, really.
Yeah.
But yet, it's all that doesn't matter because he has makes that connection.
Yeah.
You know, and I found myself a bit like that. You know, you come across people, you know, and because my music sounds simplistic and tuneful, if you like, and accessible. Lots of people think they could do it if they bothered.
Yes.
But they can't. It's like everyone. Lots of people say, "Oh, I could write a pop song," but they can maybe, but not that anyone would want to listen to and anyone would remember. You know what I mean? It's that intangible thing.
Yes.
That that some people have that conveys itself to other people.
Yeah. Do you think cultures of a country or times in a country, like war or whatever, plays an important... Does that have an effect ultimately on the musicians? Do we see like, you know, like 10 years later there's very serious, depressing pieces if a country's gone through war? I mean, I
think it depends totally on the individual. I don't think... I wouldn't generalize in that sense.
Yeah.
Some people are untouched by it.
Yeah.
I mean, I think Richard Strauss is pretty much untouched by anything.
Yes.
He wrote what he did. I mean, you know, I suppose he supposedly had some affiliations with the Nazi Party, but he kind of denied it, and he went his own way. You know, he just saw himself as a composer. Whether it's reprehensible or not, I don't know. But in his instance, he couldn't be bothered with it all, really, which is awful in one way because of the horrors of the Second World War.
Yeah.
But that's the way he was. So other people are touched. I mean, some people. The Armand was written in isolation. It's kind of, people say, quite moving, harrowing.
Yeah.
But I wrote that piece at that moment in time because I was asked to do it.
Yeah. But somebody else was thinking about it, maybe. You know, somebody was thinking about the troubles of the world.
Yes, yeah.
And it sort of snowballed on. The time we're in is not happy. Well, I don't think any time's been particularly happy, but there's a lot of trouble.
Yeah, that's probably true.
There's a lot of trouble at the moment. Carl Jenkins, thank you so much for joining us. This has been absolutely amazing.
Thank you, I've enjoyed it.
Thank you much indeed.
My pleasure, thank you.